Something completely different now. In a recent survey, 2/3 of participants admitted that they had not thought about their funeral wishes, and 59% had no idea what a digital legacy is. Clock that up to 60, because I've no idea either. Even though planning for your death or that of a loved one makes a lot of sense, it seems that we Irish prefer to stick our heads in the sand on that, along with many other issues, you might say. So what do you need to know about planning a funeral? We came across a book called Say Farewell Your Way by Jennifer Muldowney, the author of which is with me in studio. Jennifer, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me.
Why do the Irish stick their heads in the sand about planning a funeral? Is it because we don't want to think about our own?
I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. But it seems I have found in the last 2 years that I've been in the funeral industry per se, I have found that people are very interested in talking about it. They find what I do fascinating. I don't know whether it's because I'm a young female, open, bubbly, kind of happy to chat about it in a not so morbid Grim Reaper type of a manner.
You don't look like the Angel of Death.
Certainly not. Well, I'd like to think so. Thank you. Wearing bright yellow today. really screaming the opposite.
That leads to a very obvious question. How did you get involved in writing a book like this?
Well, I got involved. I was in the events, party planning, the nicer side of events business, and found myself at a number of funerals. And I suppose my logistics event brain kicked in that I just thought, wow, we spend a year planning for an event, a wedding, and yet you've 3 days to turn around a funeral for a loved one, and you're dealing with a massive array of emotions, often arguments, family disputes, everything like that. And there's no help for these people out there. There was no funeral planner, whereas we have this, Americanized notion of a wedding planner. I've lived in the States, so I think the part of that was in the back of my brain as well. But equally, I think the main thing for me was I was at a number of young funerals, and it was my first realisation that I could go tomorrow. And that was a massive deal. I was already dealing with the emotional and the loss, the funerals, but to realise that as a 30-year-old woman I could, get knocked down tomorrow. Anything could happen to any of us, and death isn't ageist. So that's kind of, the book started writing itself from there, really.
You mentioned a wedding. A wedding it's fairly easy to do. You have a church sermon if you want that. You have the civil side of it if you want. You have a hoolie afterwards. Yeah. If there's a funeral in this country, you have 3 days to plan it.
Yeah.
And if it happens suddenly, that 3 days becomes a real roller coaster of emotion.
Absolutely, yeah.
How do you go about planning it if you want to?
Well, I suppose what I like to say, in Ireland we have a tendency to sleepwalk through the process. We generally will go to an undertaker. That's the first port of call that we do. Obviously, once the hospital and the Gardaí and everything have been informed, we speak to our undertaker, and they do help to plan it from there. I suppose what I'm trying to introduce is for people to save money in introducing more personalised ways to help plan a funeral, and equally, the average funeral in Ireland today costs around €5,000, and I don't know anybody in my whole event planning history. I don't know anybody who plans and hands over €5,000.
How does it cost €5,000?
Well, I don't want to harbour on costs. I do mention them in the book. We vary massively all over Ireland. Down the country it can be around 4.5, but in Dublin it's about 5. And it adds. And burial plots, I mean, we're getting scarce. You can't necessarily pre-plan. You can't buy a burial plot in advance in a lot of the cemeteries, especially in Dublin. Burial plots in the country will be a lot cheaper. But what I'm trying to do with the book is get people thinking about their death. I know it's a morbid thing. I know it's something we don't like to talk about, but it's to get people thinking about it. We have all at some point in our lives said, I'd like that song at my funeral. I'd like to be buried or cremated. We've all made some comment, off the cuff, whatever it might be. So I'm just asking people to go and make a will, and maybe go that step further and just put a few pointers down. Just speak to your next of kin and just put a few things down that you would like to have that would represent you the most.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen tomorrow, but as you said, it might happen in 40 years' time. Presumably, a wedding plan or funeral plan is something you can amend.
Absolutely. And in the appendices of the book, I actually have the series of questions. So this isn't something that I wanted people to have to pay for. If well, I suppose they have to buy the book, but if they buy the book, it's in the appendices. All they have to do is go through the number of questions, put that out in a document, save it on your computer, hand it to somebody, and just keep it in a safe place. Everybody has a safe place they keep their documents these days. So just put it there, and you will not, the amount of burden you will relieve on your families and friends will be unbelievable. The amount of people I've spoken to since this book has kind of hit the shelves, if you like, over the last week, who have just said that they've buried people, they've, helped plan with people who've had terminal illness, and they said if they had just something like this where it was just one place where they could get the information without asking everybody.
I think that's an important point. You're not talking about your general healthy person running around for the most part.
Not necessarily, no.
But someone who has a terminal illness, to help them plan.
Absolutely. A lot of people with terminal illness might be stuck in a bed in a hospital, and they might not have access to the computers or to go to an undertaker or to speak to a funeral planner or to speak to whoever, their priest, whatever. This book is something that I suppose comes to them. They can sit down in a quiet moment. And I've spoken to a few people over the last couple of weeks who have had somebody with a terminal illness who they want to discuss it, but their family doesn't want to hear it. So you could have
a defence mechanism.
It is. It's an absolute. I know myself. Who we've all probably had. A family instance where your granny might have said, "Oh, yeah, those are lovely pearl earrings, Gran," and she said, "Oh, well, you can have them when I die."
Don't be talking like that.
Don't be talking like that. We immediately push it away, and it's maybe Granny wants to talk about it. Maybe that's something that she needs to get off her chest and just discuss with you. So.
One question that came up earlier: should you plan the funeral you would want, or should you plan the funeral that your family would want? Because I'd imagine the latter is what you're going to get if you don't plan it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I would personally go for the funeral you want. It is supposed to be a celebration of your life. That's what it should be. But equally, it should be a celebration of the relationship you've had with your family and friends, the people who you care about, the people who will be at the funeral. So I would start off with going with the funeral that you want. Equally, I know people who are quite adamant of who they do and don't want at their funeral. But
has that got real risk to offend people? If you say, I definitely, the last person I wanted my funeral is Jennifer Muldowney, and by God, she's not coming across the threshold of the church if I'm in the box.
Obviously that would offend me, but if it's something that's going to prevent family feuds on the day, maybe that is something that you need to do. I know of a family who they had two different memorials, they had two different funerals because family feud was that big. I suppose all of these questions and all of these things are things that will develop over time, but I think we need to start talking about them. We've talked about weddings and other parties till the nth degree. You go into a bookshop nowadays and how many wedding books are there?
Yeah.
How many wedding planners are out there? I know I was one. But nobody wants to talk about the celebration that's supposed to be.
Yeah, it is supposed to be a celebration of your life at the end of it.
Well, in my opinion.
The issue of the church, because we're living in a kind of a post-Catholic era where a lot of people would have grown up as Catholic or would still say to be Catholic, but they don't go to Mass anymore.
Yeah.
We had a priest on recently saying in 20 years' time there's probably not going to be any priest left in this country to perform these ceremonies. Is there any way of legislating for that or allowing for that?
It's definitely a bone of contention, and it's definitely in the book I try to stay independent of religion and undertakers and any kind of affiliations and things, because I wanted it to be just the facts, and my personal beliefs shouldn't come into it. But if you're asking me my opinion, I do think that the church potentially need to start addressing funerals and addressing weddings as well, and their, if you like, their cookie cutter schedule, I suppose, timeline that they go through. Some churches won't let you have a eulogy, some churches won't let you have certain music, and I think I just believe that they're potentially closing themselves off to a massive amount of people. Me, myself, again, I don't want to put my opinions on people, but I may go away from the church and just go straight to a crematorium to have more of a personalised service, but that's just me.
A crematorium is not for everybody either. That's a whole different issue.
Absolutely,
The one thing I want to discuss, online legacy. I have no idea what that is. Explain to me what the online legacy might be.
Well, an online legacy is, I suppose, everything that is you that's online. So there is so many oh my God, I couldn't even begin to start.
So your Facebook, your Twitter,
your Facebook,
Gmail.
your Twitter. We've got holograms they're developing nowadays that you might be able to come back from the dead, in visual form in 10 years' time? I mean, there was Tupac at, I forget which festival it was. But, you know, there's so many massive developments. There's Twitter, new Twitter accounts that, you know, will tweet after you've done.
This is a film, wasn't it? Did I see a film about this recently? Or was it a Channel 4 documentary? It was a the Charlie Brooker's thing had something like this. Somebody came back to life virtually.
Virtually,
so
yeah.
How do you stop that from happening?
See, that's the thing. There's a lot of these developments. People have blogs nowadays. We don't have, you know, boxes of photos in the attic now. They're all on Facebook. So who gets them? What happens to them? I touch on it in the book, but I couldn't go into it in detail because it would just be too much. I'd like to do another one.
Tweeting from beyond the grave.
It is, but some people, I mean, and I've only just recently discussed this with somebody who, on Facebook, for example, if somebody passes away, you have to notify Facebook that they've passed away, and their page is created into a memorial page, and only the people who are friends with the person pre-death page is visible to them. They don't pop up on chat anymore. They don't pop up as somebody you might want to know.
You'd be worried if they did.
Well, I mean, I've had people pop up on chat who have been deceased, and it's very disconcerting for me. Other people might not worry about that so much. And you know, these memorial pages, sometimes they offend people. I just had a conversation fairly recently where somebody that really, really horrified them. They kind of felt like, no, they shouldn't be on Facebook anymore. It should be taken down. So there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of developments, and I mean, legally, you know, we're never going to catch up with it. There's no way to legislate that. We just have to. The best thing I can advise any of your listeners is just do an inventory. Even just do an inventory. And again, that's in the book, is just take a note of what accounts you do have, so that at least it helps your loved ones clear it up.
And your passwords.
Well,
obviously very important. Yeah. Jennifer, it's a fascinating read. Jennifer Muldowney. The book is Say Farewell Your Way. It's in bookshops now, I presume.
It is, yeah.
It is a subject we don't like talking about in this country. Jennifer, thank you very much for joining us.